All right, this is Group 3, the second part of the textbook assignment. We have started doing responses from the responses 1 through 9. I think Carla was next with her response for question 1. All right, Carla, you with us?
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Here. Okay, sorry. Okay.
That's okay.
Let's see. Carla, I think you're up.
Okay. So just based upon research, a manager is someone, and this is really going back to what you all have said, the manager is the one who has creates the group and has the goals and objectives you're working toward, but a leader influences and facilitates what needs to be managed. Going back to what the text was saying in previous chapters, or I think it was some other Zooms that we had, that the leader, really being part of the leader, you have that vision that you are setting forth, and there's no way that you can have any type of management without having the vision or the purpose. And then the leader, which may be more than one person, because it can be a group of people. The leaders are the ones that push out that goal, that facilitate and go have those steps that they need to make the vision plain. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It
It does.
Okay.
All right. Response 2, it says, if you spend your life trying to be good at everything, you will never be great at anything.
All right. That's how the first section in Strengths and Leadership actually started out. It said that our society has had a push to make everyone want to be these well-rounded individuals, but that as a result of everyone trying to be so well-rounded, that they have actually become a mediocrity, because they never achieve greatness in one area, because they're spreading themselves out so thin, trying to achieve in many different areas. His example was about a girl, Sarah, and I know we've all experienced this at work, who comes in on a Monday morning and knows that her boss has been off on a weekend retreat and has learned a new leadership skill. So it's going to be the leadership flavor of the month, so to speak. So he pulls her into the office first thing and, gives her the rundown on what it is. And as she walks out, she's like, great, now I know that all I'm going to hear for the next month is everybody griping about this one leadership skill being, pushed down our throats. And so what he said basically is you need to make sure that you master an area and then bring in a leadership team that can help you in the areas that maybe you're not as adept at.
Right.
Okay. I think, is it Mary?
Sure, Mary, you can go if you'd like to.
Go ahead. Okay. I thought about what they said about focusing less time on our flaws and weaknesses and more time on what we do well. And invest time practicing, developing your skills, and build your knowledge on one thing that you are good at.
Very true. I looked at the bottom of page 7 there from Strengths-Based Leadership, and it says, those who strive to become competent in all areas become the least effective leaders overall. and you can work on your weaknesses, but it's impossible to be competent in all aspects of leadership. Even though I guess Gardner Webb has other ideas. It's interesting, but again, it says you should. I think kind of what Aaliyah said is, when you talk about leadership, you usually have a team aspect of things, and you put people in place on your team to be able to not mimic what you have, but be able to play a part in rounding out a well-rounded team where everybody kind of is able to bring their strengths to the table to be able to solve problems in a way that is good for everybody.
And I think going along with that it's important that for you to really be aware of of your one strength. You may have different things that you are well at when it comes to those strong traits of being a leader, but identifying that one strength and continuing to build upon that, or taking that strength that will maximize your vision or what you need to be productive in, is what will make you great. Because when you focus on that one skill, and whether it's through research, professional development, what are those self-awareness quizzes you can take, strength-based assessments you can take on yourself. When you become great at that one thing, you can, at that point, you are able to lead.
All right.
All right. Response 3 says, while he has spent much of his career in a leadership role, the vast majority of a boss's efforts have been focused on trying to mimic traits of leaders he has known or read about.
All right. Back to the first section of strengths and leadership. I think a lot of it came from the first section. It talks about trying to mimic leaders that you have held to high esteem or that you look up to. And the fact that if you don't know yourself as a leader, yet you're trying to imitate all these leaders that you think have been so great and wonderful throughout history, that you're never going to succeed, because until you know yourself, you can't lead. And then that leads us back to when we talked about the Johari window in the last assignment that we had. If you don't self-assess and understand your leadership qualities or your personality traits, then there's no way that you're going to be able to ever grasp something that somebody else has put out there.
And when I read question 3, and I thought about it, I said, and that's geared toward leaders, but also employees too. Because, if you have to mimic someone else, you're not really staying true to who you really are. And leader, it takes a leader needs to reinvest in their strength, and it takes us out of our natural element and practically eliminates the chances for success.
Okay.
That's true. Mimicking other leadership styles takes away from your own strengths. I think that's a big one for me, because I see all these leaders and I see, man, I'd like to be like them. Man, I'd like to be like them. But if I notice that just when we talk about characteristics, I may not have that strength where my boss is able to use that on the people around me. So I've got to do what works best for me. So, and I thought it was interesting about the Gallup poll in 2007 said that, from the global client database, it showed that only 32% of Americans have the opportunity to do what they do best every day at their current job. And, I thought that was a pretty interesting number. They always tell kids to do what you're going to enjoy doing, make a career out of it. And that doesn't sound like that kind of connects to that percentage of of people. But anyway, you know, when that happens, when you're not using your strengths and you're not doing what makes you happy, and you're not working with those characteristics, then it basically leads to disengaged workers. And like we talked about earlier, disengaged workers creates more sick time, more time away from your job, not as much productivity, all those things that make it harder for administration to do their job.
That is very true. And going back, when you look at others and say, oh, their school or whatever, their organization, it's great, and I want to be the type of administrator where, I have the best test scores and my, the teachers are using those best practices, but you have to think about, the art of being an administrator and the science of it. Sure, you can read all of this, listen to what others leaders have to say, but if you don't have those set of skills, whether it's interpersonal skills or analytical skills and all that, it's still not going to matter, because you're not going to be able to put it in place, which will then diminish your self-confidence. I was looking back at the study that was discussed, I believe, on page 14, 15, when it talked about Tim Judge and someone doing study and self-evaluation on how the self-confidence of some men and women were, and how those with a higher confidence had a more satisfactory career. And I was thinking about that, saying, well, if I choose to, I'll take my leader for example, if I choose to mimic her, am I self-confident in what I can do? If I'm self-confident, I don't feel like I have to look at anyone and try to go after their leadership and follow their leadership style. I should be able to put my own leadership style in place, and maybe hopefully others would want to mimic me.
All right. Question or response 4. Without an awareness of your strengths, it's almost impossible for you to lead effectively.
Unmute that. That was actually mentioned several times in both books, actually. If you don't have an awareness of your strengths, and like Carla was just saying, the self-confidence ability to raise yourself up and to meet long-term goals based on higher self-confidence from knowing your strengths aren't going to be there. They said that leadership that doesn't focus on strengths is at a 9% effective rate, and that organizations who have leaders that do focus on strength are at a 73% rate. Now, I'm not sure where the rest of the percentages went there, but obviously you have to know what your strengths are in order to lead, so that you can effectively choose people to help you in the leadership process.
Okay, and I agree with Leah. They mentioned that in both books, but and I thought about it, said if you're not aware of your strength, you will not be aware of your workers' strength, and you cannot understand your followers' needs. If you don't aware of your strength, then you won't know your workers' strength, and you won't know their needs.
All right, very, very true. And there's two different parts. There's the character strengths that you have in these leaderships that we looked in, the strengths-based leaderships, and then there's in the management organizational behavior, they talked about leadership style. So they kind of connect to each other. But if you don't know your strengths, then you're going to really struggle with things. But it's also to basically find your leadership style. And then the style was defined as the behavior pattern used most often when attempting to influence the activity of others. If a supervisor does not know their strengths or style, they will be easily influenced by people that are better in those areas. You have people that want to influence you to make, if it's people that are you're trying to hire for jobs. If you have people on the interview committee that have different strengths than you, they're going to want to hire this person, or they're going to want to buy this certain thing, or they're going to want to be able to almost kind of outwit you in regards to making decisions. So I don't necessarily mean it's an intelligence thing, but it is almost like an emotional intelligence to be able to know when someone's being authentic with you, and then know that they're trying to get something out of you. So they are very the leadership style and your characteristics of a leader are very closely intertwined.
Yeah, Matthew, it is of critical importance for one to be fully self-aware of their strengths, because you cannot lead effectively if you do not know your strengths. And I think it's important to get multiple perspectives on, not only just knowing yourself, but what others think of as your strengths based on, the feedback of others, whether it be from your staff or from your superiors, because that again will help you garner that self-awareness the self-awareness of your strengths that you need to lead others. And again, all of this is related, because when I think about this question, I think about the Johari window and how you think of yourself, how others think of you, and how all of that comes together in a way for you to lead the organizational setting that you're in. So again, if you don't know what your strengths are and even what your weaknesses are, you cannot fully lead someone, and you cannot help them grow either. If you're not aware of yourself, I don't really see how you'll be effective in helping others who are wanting to grow.
Yeah, very true. All right, number 5. All too often, leaders are blind to the obvious when it comes to something of critical importance to them, their own personality. Many political and business leaders have self-concepts that are miles away from reality. They simply don't know their own strengths and weaknesses.
All right. That can also go back to the Johari window, where you need to know your personality types, what people's perceptions of you are versus your perception of yourself. You see this a lot in schools. I've had different principals or administrators and even just colleagues who they really think that they are perceived in one way, like, oh, I'm very open, you can come to me and ask me questions or ask for my support, when in reality, nobody wants to go anywhere near them, because that's not the vibe that they're putting off. So I think that people a lot of times are very unaware of what they're actually putting out there, or what is perceived by others, and that we need to be more self-aware of that.
And when I looked at that question, I referred back to page 11 of the Faith-Based Leadership book. And it talked about how, and I'm sure most of us have encountered leaders who are not aware of their weaknesses. And the author was saying how they interviewed they spoke to several of the leaders who claimed to be great at developing their people. But when they interviewed the people, they heard a different story.
Yeah.
It was a very different story. So in some cases, the leaders in question may be better at demoralizing than developing people. At its worst, this lack of self-awareness can lead to masses of disintegrated disengaged employees, unhappy customer, and undue stress beyond the workplace.
That's true. I also kind of connected it back to that Johari window, and the connections to knowing yourself, unknown to self, known to others, unknown to others. I think there's two different aspects here. I had a hard time connecting the political and the organizational concepts of this. Like political, a lot of time politicians go into to get to the point where they have to create quite a following, and they also need to have to be able to get people to support them financially and with votes. So you have to act the way they want you to sometimes in order to get their support. So I can see definitely you could probably lose sight of who you really are when it comes to politics, because the need to become elected supersedes the need to be authentic to the people. But then in business, you had like Brad Anderson, the CEO of Best Buy. The first thing he did was he wanted to change everything. He didn't want to go by the status quo. He wanted to say, you know what, here's what's going to work. This is my idea. We're going to change everything. So we're going to make, instead of Best Buy going based upon commission and everybody's fighting after the bits and pieces of things, he said, you know what, we're going to make it to where everybody's going to get a piece of the pie. You work hard, you're going to get paid. It doesn't matter if you sell it or not. If you help people, we're customer service. We're going to make sure everybody feels like that they're almost like in the crosshairs of a hunter when they're trying to buy something, but they're there trying to get help from somebody who's not going to sell them something they don't need. So when it comes to knowing their strengths and weaknesses, a salesman might know their strengths. They can talk about it, but they may not know exactly about this product. But they'll go find somebody to help you who does know something about it. Before at Best Buy, they'll say, "Oh, yeah, this is the best product there is." Everybody's got one, so you need one too. So they're trying to, influence you as a salesman rather than influencing using their strengths. Now, of course, some people's strength is a salesman. They're a good salesman. So you find that in education. You see a lot of principals where they're salesmen and they're selling their brand of education, and they want you to follow what they're doing. Now, if you don't believe them, then you usually butt heads with them. So you may feel as that person, you're like, I'm trying to get this group of people to do what I want them to do because this is what I believe, but it may not be the best thing for kids. It may be something that the district's told me to do. They told me to cut costs here, and this is what I need to do. It may not be best for kids, but I've got to sell it to the faculty to be able to get this thing with everybody on board for it. But just to me, the politics and the business aspects were two different kind of relationships with knowing oneself and what others know about me.
Yeah.
And that was a good point, because those are two different aspects. The way that I thought of is that a lot of time, and I'm speaking from just my own personal experience, how you may think of yourself in a personal relationship, saying if you are with my staff, you may see me, I'm asking about how's your family, how are you feeling, things of that nature. But then when it comes to implementing curriculum and classroom management, I may be this completely different person to you. And to me, I'm still thinking that I'm saying this to you because I care about you, but it may be coming off as a way that seems more directive or more harsh in my approach simply because we are looking at two different roles. And I think a lot of times that's what happens. Administrators, they don't see that they may be coming off on two different sides. They're hanging on two different sides of the fence. You know, they may think, oh yes, I have this great relationship with my staff. We share things with each other. We go to lunch over the weekends. But then at school, I'm just this really firm, not bending. I expect high productivity from you at all times. And a lot of times just in my experience, I feel like administrators do that, and they're really, they feel like they're giving you that same support that they do on a personal level, when in all, the staff may be perceiving them, oh, they are so, they're very controlling and demanding in the work environment. And I just, that I think that's something that administrators really have to look at, sort of just to make sure that they are level. There's a balance in the relationship and in how they are, what they're putting out, and then what they are perceiving themselves as.
Very true. All right. Response 6. A leader needs to know his strengths as a carpenter knows his tools, or as a physician knows the instrument at her disposal. What great leaders have in common is that each truly knows his or her strengths and can call on the right strengths at the right time. This explains why there is no definitive list of characteristics that describes all leaders.
All right. Again, direct quote from the Strengths in Leadership book, right before they started talking about their own strength finder that they wanted you to use. And I believe that's the one that was an assignment, but some people didn't have the disc, so it's an if you have it type thing to send to Dr. Stedman. But as far as the knowing when to pull your own tools out of your toolbox, be it the carpenter or the physician, I think that it's just saying that leaders need to, as the rest of the questions have talked about, they need to be able to be self-aware of their strengths. They need to be able to adapt, which was talked about in the text as well, about how you need to be able to switch your styles. And they said that there's 4 styles, and you may not personally possess all 4 styles, but there has to be a willingness of each leader to be able to adapt and change to situations. And I mean, you can take this into just the classroom with a classroom teacher. We all know, having been in the classroom, that if you're rolling along and, things went great first period, but all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, what happened? You're going to have to be able to pull tools out from your basket and say, hey, all right, this worked with first period, but now I'm going to have to swing the way I'm doing things a little bit differently. And I think leadership works the same way. When they have our grade level meetings, they constantly, when they get to 7th grade, they hate coming to 7th grade because we're so much different from 6th grade and 8th grade. And they always say, 6th and 8th grade are very compliant, and we can just go in and tell them what we need or ask, and they do exactly what we want, or they give it back to them. And we get to 7th grade, and you guys challenge us, and we have to change the way we're doing things with you. And I think that just shows, one, that the 7th grade teachers can be a bit stubborn, but 2, that our leaders are at least able to adapt, pull out their different strengths as needed when they're working with different staff members.
I agree with you, Leah, because in order to be a good leader, you have to know your strength and know the strength of your followers. So Dr. Donald Clifton and the Gallup's 2007, they said the majority of the people do not have the opportunity to do what they do best every day. So some of them never know their strength because they don't have the opportunity to do what they do best.
Yes, that's true. I kind of piggyback off what Leigh was saying about one of the biggest assets that you can have as an administrator is that knowing the appropriate style to use when in the right circumstances. And that's basically style adaptability, which is the way leaders can vary their style to the appropriate demand of a given situation that is more important. So, and I was thinking not necessarily about, I know like Leigh talked about grade levels, but also teachers that you kind of talk to. You have the comparison of a new teacher compared to someone who's been there, but 5 to 10 years compared to a veteran teacher. You're going to have to change the way you deal with them based upon what part of their career they're in also. And based and also knowing what the problem is. So it's the same way we do with kids. This kid comes from a broken home and doesn't have a father around, and mom is having problems. I'm not going to discipline them the same way I discipline someone who has a family that's has both parents and has the same amount of money. We may get to the same punishment, but our conversations are going to be two very different types. The way that I know that need to go and what they need as kids, compared to just following a conversation pattern of how I deal with discipline. So being able to have that adaptability is really, really important.
Yes, it is important because, you're going to have to, at any given situation, because, we know just based on our internship that anything can happen at any point, at any time throughout the day, whether it's with staff, with the students, with parents, external members of the community, or whomever. But, there is no list. You just have to know that you're going to have to be able to adapt. You're going to have to be flexible. You're going to have to be good with communication, because that is a vital part of your everyday work, being able to communicate effectively with each other. You're going to have to know that, okay, like what you were saying, Matthew, whatever I do with my first year teacher over here is not going to be as effective as what I do with my 15-year teacher over here. And being able to pull all of that together at that moment and understanding the needs of those teachers or whoever is involved is going to be important. So I don't think there is not a list, but I do feel like what we just stated are definites that we have to be able to do, be adaptable, be able to communicate, able to problem solve, and just knowing when to use those behaviors.
All right. Response number 7. While solving difficult problems is an essential part of effective leadership, identifying opportunities for the future plays a much more important role in creating hope and optimism.
There are always going to be problems no matter what type of business you're in. And in the schools, whether it's with the teachers, whether it's with the students themselves, or something that's being sent down the line from county or state or whatever it is. And we all know that we're going to have to be able to, as leaders, help our staff get through those problems in the difficult times. But you also have to give people something else to look for. Excuse me. Sorry, guys. So you need to make sure that you're planning things for down the line. Hey, guys, this might really be horrible right now, and I know that it's tough getting through these things that we have to get through. But if we can just get through this part of the process, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that adults are just like children. I mean, I use those same concepts in my classroom. Man, I know this is terrible, and you hate writing a 2-page essay, but hey, just think, when we're finished with this, the next activity we're going to do is going to be in the computer lab, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And that gives them a little bit of hope or motivation to move on to the next thing. And I think that leaders need to make sure that with the adults that work under them, that they make sure that there is something to look forward to. Because if you're just stuck in a rut and just working on something that's difficult, you're going to have people lose morale. So you have to give them something at least to reach for at the end.
When I read this question, my mind went to Wendy Kopp, Teacher of America. I mean, it took a big vision for her and hopes to thousands of teaching students, and she took it to the entire nation. She did not give up. It was hard, but she did not give up. It was not easy, but she was determined.
Yeah, what came to my mind is in the management or of organizational behavior book, they talked about the basketball team, and they talked about, you've got this group of seniors who are playing, and some things happened and the season didn't quite go as planned. They lost some games they didn't expect to. So as a coach, you have to realize, am I going to continue to play those seniors and play for the now, or am I going to decide to play my sophomores and juniors so I can start building for the next years? Well, I think you have to have a plan in place before the season even starts to decide that. You can't just say all in the middle of the season, I'm just going to do this, and it doesn't quite happen like that. So I think that, like the book said, you have to have a little of both. You have to have a plan in place for the now, those mid goals or those short-term goals, and then have the long-term goals in mind also. And if the short-term goals go off track, you have to re-engage and go back and say, hey, what's going to be the best for our organization?
That's true. I was thinking about, the different types of management systems that have to be in place in order for employees or teachers, whatever, to feel optimistic about what they're doing. And the management of organizational behavior book talked about the employee-centered environments and then the job-centered environments. And I think when you have that employee-centered environment in which you're giving the teachers or whoever is in the organization, you're giving them you're telling them the goal, this is what we're looking to do, this is what we have to do, but then you give them that freedom to do it. This is what makes the organization more productive, and it also gives them hope, knowing that you're all working together. It increases the morale of the organization. It in turn decreases the turnover and feelings of teachers feeling not important or not a part of the community.
All right. We'll go to the next Zoom session. All right.
Next.
I'm going to stop recording.